Hello everyone. In this video, we will discuss about the Azure Physical Infrastructure. This is the continuation of the discussion what we had in our earlier video with the small, medium and large data center for an organization. Azure will also have their data center to be placed in a location because for any data center, you need a location, right? So Azure will also choose a location. The location what they are choosing for their data center, it will be a strategic location. Because whenever they wanted to set up their cloud data center, they will ensure that those data centers are not prone to any natural disasters like flood, earthquake, and also there is no civil unrest. Basically, they wanted to ensure that their data center is safe and secure whatsoever, and they build their data centers. One more important point to consider is they use natural resources as much as possible to power up their data center and cool their data center. They use natural resources for the energy to power up like solar, wind and water. So they use the natural resources to power up their data center and cool the data center. Similar to any data center, we require racks of servers. Whereas in Azure Cloud Data Center, you will have multiples of racks and racks of servers. It might be thousands or more than thousands of racks of servers and petabyte of storage. Maybe it can be exabyte of storage. So all the resources which are in the data center, it will be shared among multiple customers. This is very common for any organization, whether it is a cloud data center or small data center or any data center, you need to have all these basic entities, power and cooling. They have a robust way of monitoring, securing. They have physical security. These data centers will have very high level of security, even at the physical level and at the infrastructure level. They might use multiple levels of security to enter into the data center because these resources, whatever they have placed into the cloud data center, it is not being used by one customer. It is shared between multiple customers and organization. If there is any problem with the data center, then there might be chances of all these business who are using the Azure cloud services, they might run out of the business. It is that critical, and that is the reason why they choose the strategic location. So wherever they choose the location to build their data center, this location is called as region. So it is a strategic location, and important point to note is a region is not a country. Basically, a country doesn't have only one region. If you take example of US, US has multiple regions: East US, Central US, and West US, and other regions. Similarly, in India also we have three regions: Central India, West India, and South India. You should not assume that whenever we talk about region, a region is not limited to a country. A country might have single region, it might have multiple regions based on the geopolitical area. So, region is not equal to country. A country can have multiple regions. So, region is not equal to country. A country can have multiple regions. If I take example of India, there are three regions: Central India, West India, and South India. So there are three regions. Now we understood what is region all about. Basically, it is a strategic location where they place the data center, which is cloud data center, and it is very highly secured data centers at the physical level and also at the infrastructure level. And they have very robust way of monitoring their hardware and their infrastructure. We understood about the regions. Let us see what is availability zone. So region is a strategic location. We have a region which is strategic location. Whenever Azure setups their cloud data center, a region will have multiple availability zones, a minimum of 3 availability zone. There is a reason why they choose a minimum of 3 availability zones. This is availability zone 1, this is availability zone 2, this is availability zone 3. A availability zone can have multiple data centers. So this is data center 1, and this is data center 2, this is data center 3. So there can be multiples of data center. It is not limited to 1, 2, 3. There can be many more data centers within an availability zone. Let us take an example of region and availability zone. If I take an example of region, which is in North Europe, we have a region in Ireland. So this is one of the region in North Europe, and Ireland has multiple availability zone. Availability zone 1, availability zone 2, and availability zone 3. This data center, this availability zone will have multiple data centers. Data center 1, data center 2. So similarly, each availability zone will have multiple data center. Data center 1, data center 2. We have already seen components are entities which go into the data center. It will be racks and racks of servers, networking devices, storage, connectors and cables, and power supply and cooling devices. So why they use multiple availability zone within a region? That is the question. If this availability zone fails, if availability zone 3 fails, whatever the services which you have hosted, for example, if you have created a virtual machine in AZ3, so this is the virtual machine which you have created in AZ3. Microsoft says whenever you create a virtual machine, you need to create virtual machine at least in 2 availability zone. This is availability zone 1. This is availability zone 2. At least you need to create in 2 availability zones. Since you have provisioned your virtual machine only in availability zone 3, if there is an outage of availability zone 3, then this particular virtual machine will not be available. So this will be offline. And whatever services you have hosted on this virtual machine, it can be web application, web server, or anything which is interacting with the user. So this virtual machine will be offline and there will be no connection to the virtual machine. So simply there is an outage of your service. So whenever you create a virtual machine in one availability zone, you will have only 95% of SLA. So this is very important when it comes to the SLA part. And there could be another reason because each availability zone will have vendor who is providing the power, telecom, networking connections. If availability zone 3 is provided by vendor 1, there could be vendor 2 who is providing the power, telecom and networking supply for availability zone 2. So this will be vendor 2, this can be vendor 1. So if there is any outage at the vendor side, so vendor 1 has an outage and he is not able to supply the power. So during that time, the availability zone has failed because there is a different vendor altogether within the same region, Ireland region, who is providing the power supply, telecom and networking. For them, there is no network outage. These availability zones are online. So this will be online. Since these availability zones are online, users who have hosted their services on multiple availability zone will not have any impact. So when you deploy your virtual machine on multiple availability zone, then the SLA will be 99.99%. So this is the SLA what you get when you deploy your virtual machine on multiple availability zones. So there could be many reasons why you need to place your virtual machines or your services on multiple availability zones. There are some of the services which are zone redundant. There are some of the resources which are only available in one particular availability zone. Like your managed disks, virtual machines are all limited to the one availability zone. Because of which you need to set up your workload for different availability zones. Basically, it is for your fault tolerance. We understood what is availability zone. Now let us understand what is region pairs. We know that there is a strategic location for every region what Azure has selected. Okay, we have region, we have minimum of 3 availability zone, AZ1, AZ2 and AZ3. This is fine. Azure also says that you deploy virtual machine on multiple availability zone so that you get SLA of 99.99%. Okay, what if there is a region failure, right? What if there is a outage to region? Because all your services is accessed by the internet. The fiber optic connection or the internet which is coming from the global internet provider. If there is an outage, maybe under the sea cable is cut or something has happened, and there is no link to your entire region itself. So this is a complete outage, right? So in that scenario, we need to configure our workload or services in such a way that it can withstand regional failure. If I take the same example of Europe North, this is one of the region which is in Ireland. We have another region in Europe which is Europe West, which is in Netherlands. So this is one of the region, this is one of the region. If you have hosted your virtual machine in a two different regions, we know that each region has a 3 availability zone. For Ireland, there is a 3 availability zone, and Netherlands also has 3 availability zone. My workload or my services, what I have done is I have deployed in one of the availability zone in Ireland and in one of the availability zone in Netherlands. And these two virtual machines are providing the web services for the customers. Let us say this is an insurance company and there are users who are connecting to the web services to access their insurance statement, to pay the premium, or to download the premium certificate. So they will access via the internet. They have the web services running on the virtual machine. If one of the virtual machine fails in one of the region because of the network outage, there is another region which is able to take over. If there is a failure at the availability zone level, so if you have deployed your virtual machine within the same region and within different availability zone, then if one of the zone fails, then there is no issue because there is a zone redundancy which is available. So if this virtual machine fails in AZ1, which is availability zone 1, then the virtual machine which is running on AZ2, availability zone 2, it is always up. So now you have anyway two virtual machines which are running both in Netherlands and Ireland. So the user who is accessing the web services for their insurance account, they can connect to any of the virtual machine. If there is a regional failure, only then there is a issue of redirecting the user to the Netherlands region. If there is a zone failure, there is no issue because AZ2 is always available. This is available. Only AZ1 has gone down. User will be able to connect both the virtual machine and is able to access the insurance services. So this way we can configure zone redundant or for the regional failure for our workload or services. So one is zone failure and the other one is regional failure. Azure always ensures that there is a pairing between the regions. The criteria is the distance between each region will be 300 miles away. So if they are doing any pairing, they will ensure that from one region to another region, there is at least 300 miles distance. So that if there is any outage because of some natural disaster or some calamity, there is outage only for a particular region, not for the other region. So the services for the users or the organization who have hosted their services will be up and running. At last, we will discuss about sovereign regions. These regions are basically isolated regions from the main Azure regions. So we discussed about the regions availability zone, right? So these regions are a separate regions from the other regions. Whatever cloud services which are shared by multiple users, these isolated regions will not be shared to any other customers. So it is only dedicated for defense, for government, or for regulatory purpose.